Welcome to the Salute Your Sports Super Bowl special. Common Enchef here with Tom Castleman and Drew Brackett. We'll break down the matchup in detail, Rams and Bengals. We'll have some betting advice, not just about the game, but some fun props, Super Bowl trivia, and more. Looking forward to a fun show, guys. Our second Super Bowl special since we reunited our college radio show. It is definitely going to be a whole lot of fun, even though we might go the same way with the pick. But we'll find out here in a little bit.
Absolutely, and even if we might go the same way on the picks, we're probably going to go all sorts of different ways with the props, as we'll be getting into those. We're going with an all Super Bowl card for the locks of the week, so we're going to hear some pretty interesting things because there's only one spread, there's only one over under, so we got to get creative and find some other ways to make the game interesting to watch. So definitely looking forward to popping some of those on you guys a little bit later on in the program.
Absolutely. Looking forward to all the Super Bowl talk. And we'll start with the quarterback position, Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow. Common, who has the edge this game?
Wow, this is a brutal decision. I mean, I'll give out the stats, then I'll give out the non-stat things too. But as far as the postseason, Stafford, 905 pass yards, 6 touchdowns and a pick. Burrow, 842 pass yards, 4 touchdowns and 2 picks. I do think Burrow has played some tougher teams, some tougher defenses. You look at their regular season numbers, they're nearly identical. Stafford played one more game, so I'm going to give you the per game averages. Stafford, 287.4 pass yards per game. Burrow, 288.2, or within less than a half yard difference. 34 touchdowns, 14 picks for Burrow, 41 touchdowns, 17 picks for Stafford. So a little more touchdowns for Stafford, but also a little more picks. 100.29 passer rating for Stafford, 108.3 for Burrow. This is where it's like a statistical anomaly because Stafford has the better QBR, but the worst passer rating, 63.8 for Stafford, 54.2 for Burrow. These guys are so close. I think Burrow's going to go on to have a greater career. Burrow's only going to get better because he's, a second-year quarterback. But they have about even talent on offense to me. I think that Stafford has the best receiver in Cooper Kupp. I do think that Burrow has more depth as far as receivers, T. Higgins, Boyd, and more. I think he's got the better overall running back in Joe Mixon. Meanwhile, I think Stafford has the better overall running backfield depth. So I think I'm so split because I think Burrow's offensive line is an issue. That's the big difference. Stafford has a better O-line. I think at the moment, given that this is Matthew Stafford probably having the best season of his career, perhaps, I would say it's pretty even. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say. It sounds crazy to say it's a dead tie. It sounds like a cop-out, but I think it's this close between these two guys. I think they're both unbelievable quarterbacks. These are both top 5 quarterbacks in the game this year. I mean, we had Mahomes, Rodgers, Brady, Josh Allen, Burrow and Stafford, excuse me. Those are the 6 best quarterbacks in the league this season. Brady's out the door, obviously. So it's pretty close. I really don't know who to pick here. They both throw a great deep ball. They both can be prone to a little bit of mistakes here and there. If I absolutely had to pick, I may give the slightest of slightest edges to Joe Burrow because I trust him more not to turn the ball over. But I do think that offensive line is going to cause him some issues. So I look at these guys. They're both number 9. They're both in their first ever Super Bowl. I got them at just about dead even. 2 number 1 overall picks, by the way. 2 SEC quarterbacks, too. And as I'll have later in the program, Matthew Stafford, perhaps one of the most underrated players in NFL history. 12th all-time in career passing yards, 4th all-time in career passing yards per game. When he retires, he'll be top 5 in the history of the league in passing yards. So a lot of people sleeping on Stafford. I've got this at pretty much a virtual tie, personally.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a little bit more of an edge to Joe Burrow in this matchup. I think he's a bit more mobile than Matthew Stafford is, so I could definitely see him, out of necessity, more likely than not, needing to make some plays with his legs. The other thing I like to keep in mind with Joe Burrow, you could argue that this is recency bias, that he's played a lot better as the season's gone on. But keep in mind, he only played like 9 or 10 games last season because he had a significant knee injury with, I believe, 2 ligaments that he tore or ruptured. So early on in the season, on those like per game numbers, earlier on in the season, he wasn't really the quarterback that he typically is. So statistically on a per game basis, they're pretty even. I think that there's a little bit of a handicap on Burrow because he was coming back from those injuries. So both quarterbacks having great seasons, like you said, Common Stafford with a career year. But if I had to pick one quarterback on a drive in this game, which is very well what this might come down to, I think I might give the edge if I'd rather have Joe Burrow.
Yeah, Drew, what are you thinking? Real quickly, Tom, I think you brought up a great point on those numbers. I do think that Burrow's numbers the second half of the season were actually a little bit better than Stafford, probably more indicative of who he is. I can also argue on the flip side that Stafford was in a new offense, but I can also say that he was in a great offense with a great head coaching mind. So I would maybe if I had to pick, I could buy your argument. What do you think, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because you kind of have experience against a young guy, right? And I think probably I go with experience. And but you never know what Joe Burrow can do. I mean, he played in his high school state title. He played in the LSU championship, won a title there. So the guy is a winner. But can he win the Super Bowl against Von Miller and Aaron Donald? We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about here is that, ironically, you talk about experience versus youth, but Matthew Stafford's only played in like three more playoff games than Burrow in his career, which is
but he's been
crazy
in the
to think
league
about.
for so long. He's been in the league for so long.
He has
I
been,
think that matters. I think his ability to read defenses and his football IQ is higher than Burrow's just because he's been around.
That's a valid point. That could be true. I'd argue that perhaps the one weakness, and by weakness, I don't even call it a major weakness, but I could say it's a minor weakness. I mean, Stafford's more of a gunslinger. So when I think of like guys who read the defenses best, he's not the first guy that comes to mind to me. And as far as the big game atmosphere, I'd argue that Joe Burrow, having played in a college football national championship, is probably a bigger stage than anywhere that Stafford has played. But I think there's great arguments for both. I mean, it is literally this close, and you guys both have laid out the right argument for whichever guy you want to go with. So it's going to be fun. I think we have two great quarterbacks. I know we talked a lot about, like, can we see Mahomes versus Rodgers, Mahomes versus Brady again? We mentioned Josh Allen, and those guys aren't there, but it still feels like a monster quarterback matchup and a fresh one, something new that we haven't seen. And like I said earlier, they're both number 1 overall picks. So there's a whole bunch of talent for both of those guys.
Yeah, we're not counting Thanksgiving games as primary, as big primetime matchups.
Yeah, or games against the Bears? Come on.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, that's prime. Those are prime important games for letting everybody down right before Thanksgiving dinner.
Thanks, Matt. I would say the Lions let down their fans, not Matthew Stafford. The crazy thing is,
true.
Barry Sanders, arguably the greatest running back of all time, won one playoff game with the Detroit Lions. I think that was more of a Lions problem than a Stafford problem.
Oh, yeah.
So, Common, who has the better overall offense?
Boy, is this one close. This is really, really close. Actually, you guys want to hear a fun stat? You guys might know this stat, but in the regular season, these two teams both scored exactly 27.1 points per game. The exact same total in points per game. The Rams had a little bit more total yards, probably due because of their offensive line and not taking all those extra sacks the Bengals did. But the exact same points per game in the regular season. Rams are a little bit higher in the playoffs, but I'd also argue that the Rams have played a little bit easier teams. So they're pretty even. Like I said, look at the quarterbacks. They're just about dead even. Look at the receivers. I think that the Bengals actually have a little bit more depth, but Cooper Kupp, I think, is the best receiver in this game. But Kupp, Odell Beckham Jr., really good guys. And on the other side, Chase and Higgins, really good guys. I look at the Rams. they've got more depth in the backfield with two really good running backs. But the Bengals probably have the best overall running back in Joe Mixon. So this is really, really hard to say. Very, very evenly matched offenses. If I were absolutely forced to pick, I would give a very, and I mean very slight edge to the Rams because of their offensive line. I think when we talk about offense, it's not just about the quarterback, receiver, offensive weapons. It's the offensive line. And the Bengals allowed the third most sacks in the regular season. Joe Burrow had the most sacks as a single player, but the Ravens, who allowed more, also had different quarterbacks in. And I can't remember the other team. I think it was the Bears, actually, who also had different quarterbacks. So the Bengals offensive line really, really struggled. Meanwhile, the Rams had one of the best offensive lines. So I would give like the slightest of slight edges to the Rams because of the offensive line. But my goodness, it is really, really tight. And those guys have really good weapons. I mean, Stafford and Cooper Kupp, Burrow and Jamar Chase, those guys can go off at any moment. It's that evenly matched on a given day. Either one of these offense could be better. I'm going with a slight edge on the Rams due to the O-line play.
Yeah, I'm going with the Rams with a fairly significant, edge on this one. I think it's super duper close. I think that
really,
I think especially within the context of the matchups and the counterparts. So you have a much better offensive line for the Rams compared to a not very good line for the Bengals. And then considering how they have to match up against the defense, I mean, I could see this being not too dissimilar from the Buccaneers-Chiefs game last year, where Patrick Mahomes was flushed out of the pocket, hit a lot, having to make some miraculous throws. I think Joe Burrow is going to be in a similar situation in this game. I mean, hopefully, his receivers don't drop the ball quite as often as Mahomes' receivers did. So that'll be the saving grace, is the skill position players that Cincinnati does have. But I think, you look at Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and then Tyler Boyd versus, say, Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr. I think that the edge is slight on skill position players overall. And so offensive line, I think, is so much better for LA that's going to be what really kind of carries them in this game. So just, keeping Stafford upright, keeping him from, being forced into making the classic Stafford mistake that we've all come to know and expect. It could have come unforced. He could just make a bad throw, a bad read, throw it into double coverage, something to that effect. But I think LA will do a much, much better job kind of limiting that as far as their protection goes. So that's why I give a bigger edge to the Rams.
Yeah, I think it's really close. I think the Rams ultimately have the edge, and definitely looking forward to watching that on Sunday. Comment, how about the defense? Who you got? Who's better?
Yeah, so speaking to Tom's point, and this is the matchups thing, and I'll transition into the defense as well. But Tom, you're right, and this is, to me, the big X factor in this game is that the Rams had the third most sacks this season. The Bengals allowed the third most. So the matchups are a big point within the games. As far as defense, again, I'll list the stats, then I'll give you the breakdown. But statistically, in the regular season, the Bengals allowed 22.1 points per game. The Rams allowed 21.9 points per game. In fact, the Bengals allowed roughly 6 more yards per game, 350.8, less than 6 even. So statistically, again, very, very close. Again, in the postseason, the Rams defense has been a little bit better, but I would argue that they played against the Cardinals, who had injuries, haven't looked themselves. The Bucs had injuries, and the Titans had injuries for the Bengals, but I'd argue that the Rams played easier offenses. The 49ers more of a defensive team. So statistically speaking, they're pretty even. I think that the two teams are very, very different on defense in that the Bengals do it as a unit, and that perhaps is why they're so grossly underrated as a defense. They don't have anyone in the top 10 in any statistical category. I think they had one Pro Bowler in their edge rusher, but he wasn't necessarily one of the very top guys like an Aaron Donald per se. So it's very deceiving because all eyes would point to the Rams being significantly better. But when you look at the stats and you look at what the Bengals did against the Chiefs in that second half, holding them to 3 points, I actually think this is very, 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 very close. I'm ultimately going to give the slightest of edges to the Rams, who I think underachieved this season. They were the top defense last season. They were somewhere in that 10 to 15 range this season, above average, but not necessarily dominant. But they have come on of late in the playoffs. And I think we do have to look at them as a whole now. We have to figure in that Von Miller was not part of the team the whole season. He's got 2 sacks in 3 games in the playoffs, 5 sacks in 8 games in the regular season. And the difference really is the defensive line. I mean, this game is going to be won in the battle of the trenches, as Tom likes to say. And I know I just said the statistic, but this is where I was leading. Rams third most sacks. Bengals allowed the third most. Bengals defensive line isn't bad. Like I said, they have a Pro Bowler, but they were 10th in sacks, tied for 10th. Rams were 3rd. And it's not just Aaron Donald and Von Miller. Leonard Floyd has been a beast getting a bunch of sacks this season. Let's not forget about Leonard Floyd. I know he's more of like a outside linebacker type, but they essentially have 3 elite guys that can sack the quarterback. And I know the Bengals did better against the Chiefs, but they allowed 9 sacks against the Titans. This is going to be a tough matchup. And let's not forget Jalen Ramsey on the outside. I mean, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey are the 2 best defensive players in this game. So I'm giving the Rams an edge. But if you look at the statistics, the edge is much, much smaller than you may believe. And that's because the Bengals are an absolute unit. And in saying that, that almost worries me, because last year we talked about how the Chiefs had the bigger star power than the Bucs, and the Bucs ended up having the better overall unit. So I will say this, I think we are definitely sleeping on the Bengals defense just because it doesn't have the big names. But I'm going very slight edge to the Rams. But I mean, it is this small. Literally, my thought on looking at these matchups more closely, we're almost dead even all over the field, perhaps minus the D-line and O-line, where I think the Rams do have an advantage, but not as big as you would even think, Tom, because the Bengals D-line is also pretty good.
Absolutely. I mean, I also give a slight edge to the Rams. Von Miller playing better of late since they picked him up from the Broncos. But for me, it kind of comes down to, the 2 big stars and what they mean as far as game planning goes. You have Jalen Ramsey, who can move all over the field. So if they say, hey, we know that Joe Burrow, when things get tight, is going to be looking for his guy from LSU, Jamar Chase, Jalen Ramsey can shut him down. And he definitely does give up big plays some of the time. I mean, Tom Brady's last touchdown pass came on Jalen Ramsey, something that he's going to take with him pretty much forever. But I think that he definitely has the capability of being that lockdown corner and just taking away Cincinnati's best option. And of course, Aaron Donald, I think legitimately is the best player on the field at any time in the Super Bowl this year. Usually it's kind of odd because that goes to a quarterback. Obviously, Mahomes' best player on the field last year, but this year it's Aaron Donald. That speaks to just how good he is as an interior pass rusher and something to keep an eye on, especially if you like watching games from the line out as opposed to following the ball. Look for Donald to not necessarily have an impact in the stat column all the time, but look for him to have double and sometimes even triple teams, as I bet Cincinnati is going to be doing a lot of 6 and 7 man protections and doubling on the inside on him just to make sure that he doesn't make that impact. What that means, you have fewer receivers going out on routes. That's where Jalen Ramsey comes in and taking away an option. But yeah, I think definitely the Rams have the edge in terms of the overall skill on the defensive side of the ball. Cincinnati is playing much, much better as a unit, shown that they're able to adapt going from a 2 high safety look against the Chiefs in the first half last week or 2 weeks ago to a single high look and actually being able to execute on that despite that being, against the playbook that teams employ for the Chiefs. So it's going to be interesting to see what they throw at Matthew Stafford. As you mentioned, Common, not known as being one of the great, readers of defenses. So it'll be interesting to see if they can shift things up, change things around to make that one big play. I think I like the Rams more consistently over the game, But I definitely think Cincinnati has it in them to make a big play here or there that could turn the tide.
How about special teams? Common, you got Evan McPherson, the Bengals kicker.
You
Who
knew
has the edge?
I would love Evan McPherson.
Of course.
I absolutely love him. I'll say this real fast on the defensive side, too, before I go into special teams. Jalen Ramsey has been lobbying all week to go one-on-one against Ja'Marr Chase. It'll be interesting if that's what the Rams coaches choose and how often it is one-on-one. And if it is one-on-one often, it'll be interesting to see who wins that battle, because Ja'Marr Chase is an absolute beast. I mean, he was top 5 in the league in receiving yards as a rookie. And talk about, like, Joe Burrow maybe not having as good numbers the first half of the season. Well, the second half of the season, Ja'Marr Chase was pretty much the best receiver in football. So that's going to be a really fun matchup, a top 5 corner and a top 5 receiver. Who wins that matchup is going to decide the game, along with the offensive line matchup. Like, the Rams are going to pressure Burrow, but how good are they going to be at pressuring him? Is it going to be one of those where he's under pressure, or is it going to be one of those where he's constantly under pressure? As far as special teams, this is, again, it's pretty close, guys. It's scary how evenly matched these teams are across the board. I know you talk about Evan McPherson. He's made every kick this postseason for the Bengals, some deep 40, 50-yard kicks, including game winners in 2 straight games and pressure situations. But let's not forget about Matt Gay from the Rams. I know he's missed a couple kicks in the postseason, but 32 of 34 in the regular season. Their punter is a multi-time Pro Bowler as well. So it's pretty evenly matched here. I read an article by Sports Illustrated's Rick Goslin, and he put together his best special teams units, taking everything into consideration: punt return, kick return, punt defense, kick defense. He had the Bengals as the 12th best in the league, the Rams as the 16th best. So I'm giving a slight edge to the Bengals, but I think both of these teams have really good kickers, and I don't think the kickers are going to cost either team the game. That much is for sure.
There's my unmute button. Yeah, I think I'm actually going to call this one a draw, and I have no problem saying that it's a draw, because you look at the kickers, like you mentioned, McPherson versus Matt Gay. Both have been outstanding this season. I think that as far as like a slight edge in punting, if that means anything, Sam Hecker is known for being the punter that runs successful 4th down conversions. So, in recent Super Bowls, we've seen, the Philly special. We've seen any number of, Patriots, Mike Vrabel lining up as a tight end and getting a touchdown. We see some kind of off-the-wall things. I mean, Saints opened up the second half with an onside kick
against the Colts
for Drew Brees' Super Bowl win. So I think that we could definitely see something where maybe a slight edge to the Rams, because Sam Hecker, in addition to being just a fantastic punter, can also run a trick play that could turn the advantage for the Rams. But I think it's pretty much even straight up and down on that side of the ball, or that third phase of the game.
Yeah, I think it is too. I'll be curious to see, how many times McPherson kicks, and then, if Sean McVay with Matt Gay, if Sean McVay's aggressive, if he chooses to go for it on 4th, in the red zone or on the Bengals side of the field, we'll definitely see.
Yeah, expect a lot of kicks, Drew. We'll talk about this in the props later, but I'm expecting a lot of field goals, a lot of made field goals in this game.
All right, wow. Who do you think's the better coach, Common?
This is actually a really, really difficult question. I know everyone would assume that they'd go with Sean McVay, but I think this is another one of those tough questions. And this is a classic mentor versus mentee situation. And it's really interesting because they're kind of peers. And I saw Sean McVay give a quote because he was in the same room. He was technically the coach for Kyle Shanahan. I think Matt LaFleur might have been an assistant under him. And they were all together in Washington as assistants, those 3 guys. So it's one of those classic situations where, yes, McVay was sort of more in charge, but Zach Taylor was his receivers coach and then his quarterback coach in, by the way, Jared Goff's best season ever. Let's not forget about that. So those 2 guys certainly know each other, know their tendencies. I'd say McVay struggled a lot against Shanahan, losing those 6 regular season games, but he just got him in this last NFC title game. So it's pretty close. I mean, Zach Taylor struggled his first 2 seasons with the Bengals, but he was a brand new coach on a terrible roster. Year 3, as the young guys have gotten older, the roster's become better. He took them from the team that was supposed to be last in the division all the way to the Super Bowl. They beat the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the AFC, both road victories. So I think he is a great coach. With that said, I'm going to give, again, this is so close, the slightest of slight edges to Sean McVay, just because we've seen this. He is a brilliant offensive mind. He's taken Matthew Stafford to the next level. He made Jared Goff a Pro Bowl quarterback. I mean, Goff was a pretty good quarterback for the Rams with good receivers, but not amazing receivers. I mean, Cooper Kupp's taken his game to the next level. The addition of Odell Beckham makes him better, Matthew Stafford. But I think that the Rams offense the last few seasons has actually, even this season, overachieved just a little bit because of McVay and how smart he is. The key in this game is going to be who gets in front first, because McVay has an insane record when he's in front, especially at halftime. I think he hasn't lost a game, or maybe lost 1 game when leading at halftime in his career. So that'll be interesting to watch. Who was paying more attention to the other guy when they were in the same room? That's going to matter. They did face off once, McVay coming out on top, but that was the 2019 season when the Bengals were terrible. So I will say this too, McVay has been in the Super Bowl. He's been in this exact situation. So he has to get a little bit of an edge learning from the Super Bowl. And he learned a tough lesson against Bill Belichick in the Patriots defense. So I give a very slight edge to Sean McVay, but I think it is so close. I think most people will say he's definitely got the edge, but what Zach Taylor has done this season is wild. I mean, we were talking about Coach of the Year earlier, and Tom, you were talking about Mike Vrabel, and I was sitting here agreeing with you. I don't think we even mentioned Zach Taylor. So I think he has to get a lot of credit for what the Bengals are doing. I think this is a pretty close coaching matchup, especially since they know each other. They've been in the same room. They know each other's tendencies. That makes it even more evenly matched. So it's going to be a great coaching battle. I'm going to lean McVay, but I can't say until I see how that chess match develops out on the field.
Yeah, I'm going to go with McVay getting the edge as well, almost purely because he has been to the Super Bowl before. And like you mentioned, Common, he's talked about learning some lessons. He has said that he actually felt that he over-prepared for the Super Bowl the first time around, and maybe try to get a little too cute on some occasions instead of sticking with this is what we've done well. I think another edge that he has, and this might be a little bit more toward the intangible sides of things, is that they're at home. You know, they are in their own facility. They know their way around things. They're not going to, they know exactly where they need to be, when they need to be there. They're going to be very, very comfortable. And it's just going to be one less distraction, one less thing to mentally have to process when it comes down to how important installing the game plan is and developing how they're going to attack Cincinnati and looking at film and everything. They don't have to worry about that sort of thing. So I think that having been there before, knowing kind of how he fell short, especially when you only put up 6 points in a Super Bowl for an offensive-minded coach like McVay, he's definitely going to look at that. He's definitely going to learn from that and say, okay, what can we do better to actually get the ball into the end zone, get the ball into the red and green zones on the opponent's side of the field to put ourselves in positions to score. So I'm going to go with McVay on that one. They're going to be drawing up similar game plans. They both run a lot of 11 personnel, which is 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. So those points of the game, I think that's going to be relatively even. But just from like a comfort level, a pressure level, edge to McVay and his staff in this game.
It's almost as if they've coached together and have a similar game plan. I mean, that's the beauty of this. Absolutely.
It's interesting. I hadn't heard that. McVay thought he over-prepared for the last Super Bowl. Well, hopefully he doesn't under-prepare in this one and just wing it. I wouldn't like that. But, yeah, I think McVay's definitely got the edge on the coaching. But you just never know what can happen in the Super Bowl. How about the intangibles? Common, what do you think? Is that Rams home field going to matter?
So I think this is virtually a wash. I would say the Rams' home field is a very, very slight advantage in that what Tom said. They
Mhm.
know where they are. They know how to prepare. They know the stadium and the field. I don't think the crowd's going to have much to do with it for two reasons. One, even if this was a true Rams home game, their fans are not very helpful. I mean, the 49ers was a closer matchup. So the 49ers fans being louder was because they're so geographically close. But beyond that, the Super Bowl is kind of a corporate thing. I mean, the team fans do travel, but there's a lot of neutrals that travel. So I think they're going to have roughly the same amount of fans. If anything, the Bengals might have more fans. So I don't think the home field matters very much. But if I had to say, maybe a little bit, just because you do feel your own comfort in your own stadium. Interestingly enough, in the history of the NFL, we never had a team host a Super Bowl played in their home stadium. We had it last year with the Bucs beating the Chiefs. We have it this year with the Rams taking on the Bengals. They have the advantage in the intangibles for that, maybe a little bit. And I think they do have the advantage in that McVay has been in the Super Bowl and they have a lot more experience. I think the Bengals roster I saw on ESPN had just one guy that has played in a Super Bowl. The Rams have multiple guys. They've got roughly about a dozen guys that have played in the Super Bowl. A lot of the key guys, like Aaron Donald, playing in the last Super Bowl against the Patriots just 3 years ago, I guess that was. And not to mention Von Miller, who's a Super Bowl MVP. Talk about intangibles. He did that with the Broncos. So I might give a very slight edge to the Rams, but the Bengals have an unmeasurable intangible, and it's that they're the underdog, and they're great as the underdog. People expect the Bengals to lose. They were the underdog in 2 playoff games. They won outright as the underdog. They were the underdog in the division. They won the division. They were supposed to get 4th in that division this year. And actually, you look at some of their losses this year. They lost against the Jets. They lost against the Bears. I found the statistic, and I can't remember it, and I couldn't find it anywhere, so I'm not sure what it was. But I did see this on ESPN where they have like an insanely good record as an underdog straight up winning games this year. So they have that advantage of we've got, nothing to lose. They've got a young team. I mean, if they lose, it'll be like Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. We're going to have these guys for another dozen years. And Zach Taylor, young, new coach, first playoff. I mean, no one's going to say the Bengals losing in the Super Bowl is a disappointment. And there is something to be said about being the underdog. So I think the Rams with the experience and the home field have to get an edge for that. But I think the Bengals get an edge for just being those guys that are supposed to lose. So maybe very slight overall edge to the Rams, but I'd say it's pretty even here.
Yeah, I think the tangible intangible of the Rams being at home is a definite advantage for them. But kind of, I'm right with you, Common, on your thinking about the Bengals and how they're approaching the game as the underdogs. I think a little bit is, I know it's cliche to say like they're too young to be afraid, but in a way that's kind of how, especially on the offensive side of the ball, that's how it feels with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I think a big component of that is having won a national championship at the collegiate level
together.
So even though they haven't, played in the Super Bowl or anything like that, they've played for all the marbles, the big championship at the end of the season before, and did quite well for themselves in that matchup. So I think that it's going to be pretty even up, and I think that there's a slight chance that being in the Super Bowl before, it's a double-edged sword, where yes, the Rams have the experience, they know how to prepare a bit better, they know what to expect as far as the emotion and the impact of the game. Could it also lead them to feeling a little bit tight, a little bit like, hey, we don't have a draft pick until the year 3000. We have to go for it this year. This is our one chance. This is our opportunity to make good on what we missed out a couple of years back against the Patriots. Does that maybe actually work against them a little bit? Hey, our quarterback's 32. The Bengals are like, you can't, obviously, like, football progression isn't linear. You can be great one year and not great. You can go worst to first and reverse. It's not like basketball or baseball where there's more of a bell curve to this sort of thing. The NFL is just such a crazy league that you could definitely have Burrow and Chase being like, hey, we're young, we're in our early 20s, we can definitely get back here if we lose this game. That might not be the case because they're also looking at the conference and seeing Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. I think they're going to be really, really serious, prepared for the game. Of course, like there's no chance that they wouldn't be. But the Rams might feel a little bit tight if they feel like this is their window and they don't have the same kind of future lens that the Bengals do. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think we'll definitely see it being, a little bit tight at the beginning of the game, but definitely opening up later, and we'll see which kind of advantage bears out a little bit better.
Two quick things before I get Drew's take on this. I just want to answer what you said. When you talk about Super Bowl experience, well, look at the Buffalo Bills. They played in 4 straight Super Bowls. They knew exactly what was going to happen every year in a row, and they lost all 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They lost, 3, 4 NFC championships in a row. Maybe the 4th time was the charm, but they had a long losing streak in the NFC championship game. Obviously, there's the opposite example. The Patriots and all that Super Bowl experience has paid off for them. But there are examples on either side of that. So a lot of it is going to be like mentally, who has it in here? Who has the mental strength to really, answer those question marks? Because there is a lot of interesting possibilities here in the Super Bowl. The other thing, I know we're talking about Joe Burrow. Oh, he'll be back here. But I actually think, and we'll see what bears out with the other teams. But I do think the Bengals were a little bit fortunate against the Chiefs. I actually think as good as the Bengals are, I think the Chiefs and Bills are just slightly better. And in a one-game scenario, anyone can beat anyone. We've seen that. But there is no guarantee that the Bengals will be back because, as you said, Mahomes and Allen are there. And there's going to be other teams and other players up and coming. And the thought that comes to mind is Dan Marino. Dan Marino made the Super Bowl early in his career and lost, never made it back. And he never won a Super Bowl. So there are no guarantees at all when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think that, it's close. And I like the Bengals in that underdog role because nobody's expecting them to win. So watch out come Sunday. Common, who do you think wins this game? What's your score?
Yeah, so for me, this is a total toss-up. And I think the more closely I've looked at these matchups, the more I'm convinced that 4.5-point line is not fair. I think that line should be smaller. I think the Bengals are not getting enough love. I mean, they were 7-point underdogs against the Chiefs. They knocked off the Super Bowl favorites, and they're going to be 4.5-point underdogs. It just doesn't make sense. I know Vegas often maybe knows things we don't. In the past, I've done decent against Vegas. Definitely not a great year this last year against Vegas, though. Personally, my worst year ever against Vegas. So maybe they know something I don't, but that 4.5-point spread just feels off to me. I think it's a total toss-up. They're so evenly matched in many areas. I'm about 51% sure the Rams are going to win this game because I really think it could go either way. There's something special about the Bengals and what they're doing. But with that said, I'm going to go back to the stats. My famous stats typically do okay. They've definitely done horrible this year because stats haven't meant anything in the NFL with all these upsets. The Indianapolis Colts losing against the last worst place team in the league in the Jaguars last game of the season when they had a chance to make the playoffs. But the one thing that stands out, the one area, and we've talked about this ad nauseum to use a Castleman word, but the thing that sticks out is that the Rams have a great defensive line and the Bengals have a bad offensive line. 3rd most sacks this season for the Rams, 3rd most sacks allowed for the Bengals. So that's my one thought. The Rams get a very slight advantage because their offense or their defensive line matches up better against the Bengals defensive line or offensive line, excuse me. So I'm going to go with a really close score because I'm very unsure. And because the last 6 playoff games, the 4 divisional round games, and then the 2 conference championship games, all 6 were decided by 1 possession. 5 out of 6 decided by 3 points or less. 5 out of 6 decided on a last-second play. That 4.5-point spread, I'm going to do this with my betting. This is a smart bet that I advise for folks. Take it with a grain of salt because my luck hasn't been great, even though I was 99 percentile making picks in the NFL this season. Not so great against lines. But I'm going to advise this bet. Take the Bengals to cover 4.5 and take the Rams money line. That way, there's a possibility for you to win both bets. But if you lose one, you're at least going to barely lose money if you bet the same amount. So with that in mind, I'm going to pick 24-23 Rams. Last second field goal. Rams win by 1. I keep talking about how close these matchups are. Rams win by 1. The closest of close games, Rams by 1. 24-23. And that's like 1 point under the over-under, which I think is also an interesting bet. 48.5. I've got it at 47 points. So it's going to be a great game.
It's kind of scary that I've been alternating between two scores in my head. I've got Rams winning this one, and I've been between 27-24 and 24-23 as the outcome.
Do it, Tom.
So
We've done well lately.
So to be a little bit different, I'll go 27-24. Just a little bit different. I do think it's going to come down to field goals. I mean, either way, it's going to be compelling if it's going to be game winning to avoid OT, or if it's going to be, the kick comes down to who wins or loses the game. But I'll go with a few more points on the board in this game, 27-23 Rams.
23 or 24?
27-24.
27-24. One real quick thing before you go, Drew. That's the difference, I think, that the Bengals have settled for a lot of field goals in the playoffs. And their kicker has been lights out, and he's going to make them again. But I think the Rams have done a better job of finishing drives. So what, if I go 24-23, that's what, 2 touchdowns and 3 kicks for the Bengals, and then 3 touchdowns and 1 kick for the Rams. Yeah. So I would have the Bengals actually having more scoring drives, the Rams just finishing in the red zone. And that's been what the Rams have been good at, keeping teams from finishing in the red zone. I mean, you look at that 49ers game, it was 17-14, and one of the touchdowns for the Niners was a screen pass that went 50 yards to Deebo Samuel. So the Rams have, and even against the Bucs, they got beat deep late in that game with Brady. So the Rams have done a little bit better in the red zone. The Bengals have settled for a lot of field goals. So that's what I'm thinking with that 24-23 score. But I think it's going to be like the Bengals might actually get more total yards, but lose because they can't finish in the red zone. And it's going to be because Aaron Donald is going to get some sacks in the red zone.
Love it. I got Rams winning 21-17.
Okay, so you're definitely going low here, Drew.
Yes, 21-17 Rams win.
All right, I knew we were going to go a show pick for the Rams. I will give you guys your credit since you guys haven't talked about it. If I was in that seat, I would have mentioned that I had the Rams all year. These guys had the Rams in the preseason, Rams in the midseason. I even gave you guys a shot to hop off the Rams bandwagon when they were struggling, and Tom said, "Oh no, I'm still on that bandwagon." So you guys had Rams all the way this season in our preseason and pre-playoffs, pre-conference championship picks. So you guys definitely got to go with your pick. What are we thinking as far as the game MVP, though, guys?
I'm going to go Cooper Kupp on this one. I think that it's easy to look at, usually the quarterback is the one who wins it on the offensive side of the ball. But I think Cooper Kupp is just going to continue to be as outrageous as he's been all season. I could definitely see him having a game where he has like 8 to 10 catches in that range, 140 something yards and a touchdown. And I think that part of what's going to play into this is the way that MVP's decided. 20% of the overall vote is based on the fan vote. And I know that there are a lot of people who love themselves some Cooper Kupp. So I think he's going to be such an overwhelming favorite that 20% weight is going to be pretty heavy. The other 80% is a panel, I think it's like 16 or so former players and maybe coaches, something like that. But yeah, I think Cooper Kupp is going to be the one who wins MVP.
You talk about storylines, and we talk about Matthew Stafford, struggling with the Lions all those years, but Stafford was the number 1 overall pick. Cooper Kupp, and maybe you look this up while I do this. I wasn't prepared for this, so I don't know what round he was, but I think he was a later round pick. I think he played at like Eastern Washington, and I believe I saw something where his girlfriend like worked full time during college. Third round. That's pretty late. You don't expect a guy leading the league, getting the Triple Crown, yards, touchdowns, receptions as a 3rd round pick. And it was something like where his girlfriend worked throughout all of college just so that he had enough time to train and be ready for the NFL. And she sacrificed for him. And now he's got himself a fat contract. He's got himself, an all-pro receiver, top 5 player in the game. So Cooper Kupp would be an incredible storyline. I'm going to go a little different, though. I'm going to go with Aaron Donald at plus 1,600. So Cooper Kupp is 3rd most likely MVP. It's Stafford, Burrow, Kupp, Donald, then Jamar Chase is the 4th. At plus 1,600, that's what? You bet $10, you win 170, I think, maybe 160, something like that. So I think Aaron Donald is a great outside MVP favorite just because he's playing a horrendous. Odds? What's up?
What were the odds again?
Plus 1,600, 1,600.
So if you bet 100, you win 1,600.
Okay, so if you bet 10, you win 160, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. I think Aaron Donald for me is just such a beast, and he actually had a little bit of a down season, which is crazy to think about. Again, he's more of a defensive tackle, not a defensive end, but he's a guy who's had like 16, 17 sacks before in that range, and he had maybe like 12 and a half, and I think that he's just primed for a big game. I think he's going to explode on the biggest stage. And I think that you talk about double and triple teams. I mean, I think he'll face double teams, but with how bad that line is, he may get past them anyways. And I don't know if they can afford to do triple teams because you've got Leonard Floyd and Von Miller, who are really good pass rushers as well. So I think this is prime for Aaron Donald. I look at this like Stafford and Kupp will be good. I look at Odell Beckham, I think will steal some of Kupp's thunder because he's really coming on of late. So I look at like all those guys having solid games. I'm calling for a 3-sack, a forced fumble, forced recovery. He gets that in one play. He makes a big play, forces the fumble, and recovers it himself. And I think Aaron Donald could be MVP. But if not Donald, I can definitely see Kupp getting a 2. And obviously Burrow and Chase and Stafford, those are the 5 guys that I would look for. But I'm going to go with Donald. Why not? Let's go with a little bit of a long shot. Who do you got, Drew?
I think it's going to end up being just Matthew Stafford. You go quarterback. In this one, he's going to go 350 yards, and, of course, the Rams will win.
Yeah, one other thing to think about, the Bengals have actually struggled against the deep ball this season, and Stafford has, like, the most deep ball touchdowns. I think it was, like, him and Burrow were, like, tied for the most touchdown passes over 30 yards or something I saw in the league, which is something to think about. Could be a lot of deep balls, especially if we have a one-on-one. Jalen Ramsey, Jamar Chase could have a deep ball on the other end. And the Bengals did a great job of the second half against the Chiefs in the deep ball, but we'll see how they do against the Rams because Matthew Stafford does throw a phenomenal deep ball, and they've been, 20-something was their ranking against the deep ball this season. So that is something that the Rams could take advantage of. I think it's going to be a fun Super Bowl. I'll say this, and I, could be wrong since I'm saying it, but I'll say this. I would be absolutely shocked if this is a 2-score game. I think it's going to be 7 or less. The only scenario I can see it being a 2-score game is if it's something like, 3 to 7 points and someone gets a field goal late to go up like 10 or something. But this should be a really, really close game. I do think that the Rams are going to win. We've had all these upsets. I think this time the favorite does hang on because of that defensive line. So we'll get into betting locks here, unless you guys have anything else. Oh, you know what? Favorite Super Bowl games and moments. Let's talk about some of our favorite moments before we get into betting locks. But one more recap of the scores: 24-23 Rams for me, 21-17 Rams for Drew, 27-24 Rams for Tom. So, and I've seen more experts pick the Rams too. So you know what that means when those ESPN guys all got together and they all picked, these games. They all had the Chiefs against the Bengals, and they were wrong. So we'll see what the experts do. You guys know this. ESPN's betting experts are well under 500 this season. None of them have picked as well on games as well as Tom and I have this year. And Drew has picked better than anyone when it comes to betting in this whole country, I'm convinced. So for what it means, you never know what's going to happen in the Super Bowl. I'll say this: a Bengals win would not surprise me one bit. Would not surprise me one bit. Favorite Super Bowl memories, like whether it's games, commercials, family moments, halftime shows. What are some of your favorite moments in your life as a sports fan watching the big game, as we call it here in America?
Well, I definitely, I know we kind of touched on this topic last year. So I did a little bit of digging in the memory bank, trying to think of some things, Googling, of course, best Super Bowl commercials of all time, just to kind of jog the memory a little bit. And I did not realize that the Terry Tate office linebacker commercials that Reebok put on were Super Bowl commercials. And those have some of my favorite, most iconic lines. You kill the Joe, you make some mo, being a classic one. And just kind of watching the progression throughout the game of, let me pull up the actor. I think it's Lester Spate is the guy who plays Terry Tate, the office linebacker, and just the phenomenal job that he does bringing that football intensity to a relatively drab work environment. If you haven't seen those commercials or haven't seen them recently, go ahead and look them up. They hold up really, really well. They're fairly timeless and just all around enjoyable, especially for most of us who are more used to, say, an office setting than an actual Super Bowl game. Fun to kind of see a little bit of the blend in there. So those are always fun to watch. I'm looking forward to the commercials this year. Hopefully we have a lot of good ones. I know commercials try to be funny, sometimes hit the mark. They usually hit the mark when they're trying to be sad and down about things, but hopefully we have some nice uplifting stuff because we can definitely use that in these times.
Yeah, real fast, I'll hit on my commercials and halftime shows, then I'll talk about the games later because I do have a long list for games. I actually spent, for all the time I spent researching games, and you guys know I spend time researching for the show, I spent exactly 0 time researching the halftime shows and the commercials because it's like if something's truly memorable, I'll remember it. So for that portion of things, the things that stand out to me are the Yo Yao commercial with Yao Ming, where he's like, I don't remember where he is. He's outside a store or something, and someone's saying like, yo, like, hello. And he's like saying, Yao, my name's Yao, not Yo. And it's like, yo, Yao, yo, Yao. Just a classic Super Bowl commercial. Then I love the other one with Brett Favre, where he's in a wheelchair and they're writing like Brett Favre, like 2030 Super Bowl MVP or 2050 Super Bowl MVP. Just a running joke as far as just how long Brett Favre played. And it's funny to think about Tom Brady played until an even older age than Brett Favre. So I feel like they can remake that commercial with Tom Brady and do really well as well. So those are some of the commercials. As far as halftime shows, the first one that I thought to mind, maybe not for the wrong or right reasons, but was the Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake when they had that little faux pas on TV. That's the first thing I think of. And then my favorite Super Bowl performances, I thought Prince in 2007 was an iconic one. I know that's considered the best one, but Prince was really good. And then this is one that I think was loved or hated by many. So it depends on what side of the aisle you sit on. But I absolutely loved when Katy Perry brought out those sharks in the Super Bowl. I can't remember exactly what Super Bowl it was, but I was a sucker for those sharks with Katy Perry. Now that was A+ Super Bowl halftime show. Anything stick
Yeah.
out to you, Drew? Any response, Tom? You're laughing over there.
That's not where I thought you were going to go with favorite Super Bowl. I don't actually really remember all that much from the Katy Perry performance. I know, like,
Just the Sharks.
I'm not the target audience for a lot of the Super Bowl halftime shows, because I think what they aim to do is make them geared more for not hardcore football fans, because that's how they're trying to bring in the broader audience.
Sure.
I will say I'm really excited for this year's halftime show, because we're getting LA hip hop with Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, I think Kendrick Lamar. I don't know if I'm missing somebody. Hopefully not. I've got to look for a prop bet on over under censored words. You know, that bleep machine is going to be working in overtime on that one. I think it'd be fantastic. Like, I know that they can't actually do this because there's actually going to be children at the event. But it'd be fantastic if you have, like, on a 10 or 15-second delay on the TV, but then you could also stream an uncensored, unfiltered version of the halftime show. I think that'd be really fun. But I imagine that they'll keep it pretty clean. These are professional guys. They know how to.
I'm not so sure how clean Eminem's going to keep it, and that'll be something fun to see. How about you, Drew? Anything that sticks out?
I mean, there's always the Budweiser, Clydesdale commercials.
Of course,
those are always
classics.
good.
Yeah, those are good.
Usually there's good Bud Light commercials. They always have a theme of some sort. I just can't remember commercials in general. But then the halftime show, yeah, I enjoyed Tom Petty back in the day when he performed.
Yeah.
I thought he was awesome. So,
Yeah, he was.
definitely looking forward to this one, though. This will be a good one.
U2 also, I just thought of when you mentioned Tom Petty. U2 had a good halftime show too. As far as games, these are some of the games. This one, I have a little bit more extensive list. I'll try to keep it brief, but I thought there's some incredible games. So I would say the very first meaningful Super Bowl for me was the very first one I watched, and that's when I didn't even know football or understand it. So you guys know this. I was born in Bulgaria. I moved to the USA in 1999. The Rams-Titans was the first Super Bowl I ever watched. I didn't even know the rules. That honestly might have been the first football game I ever had watched. Like, in Bulgaria, they don't watch football. So I think that was, and I do vividly remember watching it and seeing that tackle at the 1 yard line. That's something that really stood out to me. And then I remember the second Super Bowl was Giants-Ravens. And we had a thing in class, and for the life of me, I can't remember what I won, but we had a thing in class where you had to predict who won and who got the right score. And we were a class of like 25 kids, and I was one of 4 kids that picked the Ravens to beat the Giants. And I had the closest score, so I ended up winning a prize. I can't remember what it was, but that was probably the start of me betting. And back in those days, I was almost never wrong as a kid. I was almost always right at sports back then because I spent all day watching sports. Ironically, now as an adult, someone who's worked in sports media, I've watched less sports than I used to back then. At that point, like, all the different kids would come home and play video games. I would come home and watch sports. Like, I watched an unreal amount of sports, hence why my picks were even better, because I knew like the third string punter in these teams back then. But my another memory that sticks out was probably the 2001 Super Bowl. This was probably the first year where I fully understood what was going on, and I had a rooting interest in the Super Bowl. I was a Rams fan, greatest show on turf, and of course, Tom Brady and Adam Vinatieri broke my heart. But that's the first Super Bowl I remember us kind of getting like a bunch of food and just sitting down watching the Super Bowl, watching the commercials, and seeing what the whole experience was about. Then the 2005-06 Super Bowl season, that was one of the most meaningful for me because it was the Chicago Bears, the team I cheered for, going up against Peyton Manning, who at the time was my favorite NFL player and probably my second favorite all time behind Patrick Mahomes. I love Peyton Manning, and it was one of those like very like conflicting experiences because I wanted the Bears to win, but Manning at the time had no Super Bowls. Brady had a few. And I wanted Manning to win. And I was convinced the Colts were going to rout the Bears. And then Devin Hester gets that touchdown to open the game. And then I'm like, oh, maybe the Bears have a chance. And sure enough, the Colts ended up winning big as I thought, but that was a meaningful Super Bowl. And then some of the more recent ones, I would say that Brady and Patriots comeback 28-3 against the Falcons was incredible. That pick by Malcolm Butler off Russell Wilson when they should have given the ball to Marshawn Lynch. The Patriots coming out on top there. But then also the Philly special, the Eagles coming out against the Patriots. And then let's not forget the Giants beating the Patriots in the undefeated season with that David Tyree helmet catch. The Patriots have been on the right side and the wrong side of some of the most incredible Super Bowl games. So there's a lot of memorable ones. And that's why Tom Brady's such a big name, because we remember all those moments in the Super Bowl. And he had some bad ones too. Not all good for Mr. Brady. He did lose some Super Bowls. Steelers, Cardinals. I was a big Kurt Warner fan. My other favorite quarterback. I remember Ben Roethlisberger getting that late touchdown to Santonio Holmes. And then probably my favorite Super Bowl was just the one a couple years ago. You know, obviously as a Bears fan, I haven't had the chance to see a Super Bowl live for me personally. And the Chiefs are my second team because I lived 6 years in Missouri. Big Kansas City Chiefs fan. Chiefs down 20-10 in the fourth quarter. They get 3 touchdowns, win 31-20. Seeing Mahomes lift the trophy, that was a very, very special one. Those are just some of the ones that stick out to me. But I've loved almost every Super Bowl, minus that Rams-Patriots one that was 16-6, an absolute garbage of a football game.
I don't know if there's any Super Bowls left to mention. As far as the big ones go, no, you pretty much covered them all. You know, the one that I both, enjoy and remember like disliking the most is that one with the Patriots in 2008 losing that game simply because I was kind of tired of hearing about the 1972 Dolphins. I was kind of ready for somebody to stick it to them and go undefeated.
The champagne.
And here we, I don't think that's ever going to happen at this rate. I mean, the more and more games that they add, the more and more difficult it's going to be to break that record. So that was definitely a memorable one, especially just like with how bizarre the catch is, a special team receiver in David Tyree making that catch. And as far as big moments go, I remember this one from the blowout Seattle Seahawks Denver Broncos game, where the game opened up with the first score being a safety. And this was
that one.
I think this was in
Crazy.
college. So I think I was like watching the game with our friend Jonathan Deutsch from Mizzou, and just saying somebody just won a lot of money in Vegas for putting down a wager on that bet that the first score of the game could be a safety. And of course, the quality of game went way downhill from there. Definitely was hoping for a better game, but that's something that we've been treated to, quite frankly, over the past couple of decades. Is for the most part, all of these games are competitive to the finish, and so that's something that's definitely a blessing. There's certainly been a lot of blowouts in Super Bowl history. Thankfully, many of them before. We were certainly old enough to be watching a lot of these games. So that's what we're hoping for this year as well, especially in a year where it's not the Chicago Bears for me, my favorite team in the Super Bowl. I'm just looking for a really compelling game to keep me watching to the very end. I mean, I'll probably watch even if it's a bad game, but that doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah, real fast. One more I forgot, Tom. I forgot that Broncos win over the Panthers. They were a huge underdog. I called that victory myself. Guaranteed the Broncos win. The Von Miller MVP. It was Peyton Manning's swan song ride. That's one that I forgot to mention. Drew, what are some of the ones that stick out to you?
Yeah, I mean, you guys kind of went through the list, right? The Patriots pick. We've had some really good Super Bowls within the last 10 years. So we've definitely been fortunate in that aspect. I think that the Philly special comes to mind, 28-3 as well. So I'm just hoping for a good game.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a good game. I would be shocked if it isn't. Betting locks of the week. You guys ready for that? All righty.
Let's go for it.
Rare losing week for Drew Brackett. You were 1-2. Don't worry, Drew. You're still in first place at 52-39-2. You got the Nets +6 at the Suns. You were wrong. The Suns winning by 10. USA Honduras under 2.5 goals. 3-0 USA, just barely getting you there. Mexico, Panama, under 2.5 goals. Correct, 1-0 Mexico. I was 2-1. I had the Bucks minus 11 over the Wizards. They won by 14, 112-98. I had Spurs minus 6 over the Warriors. You say, why would you make that pick, Common? The Warriors had like 7 guys out, like maybe 6 out of their 7 leading scorers, 4 starters out, and it didn't matter. That's how good the Warriors bench is. Warriors winning 124-120. They were actually down in that game by double digits late in the third quarter. Furious rally for the Warriors. And then I had the Suns minus 6 over the Nets. Suns are my lucky NBA team lately. Whenever I bet on the Suns, they cover for me. They won by 10 there. Tom, you also had that Spurs game. You missed that line against the Warriors. You had Kyrie Irving over 25.5 points. Kyrie had 26. How about it, Tom? There's a trend that I'm noticing. Tom used to get barbecued on these NBA props where he'd lose by half a point. Lately, he's winning by half a point. So we definitely have a little trend here. And then Tom had DeJounte Murray over 37.5 points, rebounds total. He had 45 total points, rebounds, assists. Might have gotten a triple-double in that game, I think. So solid week for Tom. If not, he was close. He definitely hit over.
Yeah.
So we're going to be moving down to 3 locks of the week after NFL season. As you saw, we had 3 picks this last week because all we had was the Pro Bowl, which turned out into two-hand touch. Flag football might have been much better, but we won't spend time talking about that garbage game. Let's get into our Super Bowl props. So we have 5 picks here, 5 picks each. Could be anything. We want at least one to be not game-related. Could be more, though. Anything that you guys want for those 5 picks, as long as they are Super Bowl related.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and lead off first with I'll go with a nice simple one everyone can comprehend. Bengals +4. We all have this as being a relatively close game, I think. Even Drew Score has it.
I'd say 4.5 is out there if you want it.
I'm seeing 4.5 everywhere, Tom. Why don't you take that half point?
I have not done research since late last night. Been out of it a little bit.
I'm looking at 4.5 right now in several different places.
I'll take 4.5. Then, yeah, so some of these numbers might be a little bit off. Hopefully not too far off so that they still count. Give me both teams to score 20 or more points. Give me yes on that at -120, which is slightly toward the juice, but I'll give it back with some value here. The first score is going to be a field goal. You can get that at +145.
Okay.
This is going to meld right into my next prop pick. Give me the first quarter under 9.5 points. For a little bit of context, the Bengals average 4.3 points in the first quarter. Rams average 4.0. These are both teams that start off slowly. So give me under 9.5. Also, I believe I have this right. Bengals, 1 first quarter touchdown in their last 9 games. Rams, 1 first quarter touchdown in their last 12 games. So give me a field goal being the first score of the game, or first quarter under 9.5 points. And then this is kind of sort of common. I'll let you be the judge on this one if this is going to be football or more prop related. The team who has won the coin toss has lost the last 6 Super Bowls. So give me the coin flip winner to lose at -105.
That works.
That works. Okay.
That works. We'll give it to you. We're not strict on this. We'll give it to you.
I mean, if you want, I could also pick, national anthem under 1 minute and 38 seconds. But no, I'll stick with the coin flip.
You go with,
you guys might touch
whatever your gut feeling is. That's different enough for me.
I said this aloud last year at the Super Bowl, watching it with at home with Jenna. I said, when the Chiefs won the coin flip, I said, well, Buccaneers are going to win this game now. I should probably text Common and Drew. And I was like, no, I won't text that to them. And I should have.
You should have.
You definitely should have.
I'll be watching that closely now. I will keep in mind.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be interesting. In a game that we think is a toss-up that could, quite frankly, be the difference maker.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well,
what do
I'll
you
take
got,
a
Drew?
swing. Yeah, give me a Joe Burrow over 11.5 rush yards.
Okay.
Cam Akers over 64.5 rush yards.
Okay.
Cooper Kupp under 106.5 receiving yards.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse Bates over 5.5 tackles plus assists.
Okay.
And then heads on the coin toss.
All right. Awesome. So I'll start with the other one. I'll go tails never fails. I know Drew and I will have our yearly $10 wager, which he's won about 80% of the time so far. So I'm certainly due. But I'll tell you this. They're using a Highland Mint coin. That's the coin that they're using now for the heads and tails. They started using that since 1994. In the 28 past Super Bowls, we've had 17 tails and 11 heads. So there's just something about that coin and it being more likely to land on tails. So I'm going tails on the Super Bowl coin flip. I've got this we talked about right before we got on the air. I actually didn't see this anywhere in a sports book, but I did see it in Drew's prop bets sheet that he sent us that we'll be filling out amongst the three of us. Over 1.5 times Tom Brady is mentioned during the Super Bowl. I feel like Tom Brady is Mr. Super Bowl. Tom Brady is Mr. I want attention, now saying that, I might want to come back, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Attention Brady. That captivates all broadcasters. As a sports broadcaster, I can tell you that the number one problem in the industry for sportscasters is cliches. Everybody likes a good cliche. It is a long broadcast game. Even with all the commercials, it's going to be a long time. You better believe they're going to talk about Tom Brady at least twice during the game. Thankfully, I am not going to be working during it at work. I work on Sundays, but we have just a Super Bowl special at 2:00. So I'll be done in time to watch the game in its entirety. So I'll definitely be texting both of you as soon as I hear a Tom Brady mention. Send that in the group chat. And then moving on, I've got, let's see, over 3.5 total field goals. Evan McPherson of the Bengals is averaging 4 kicks per game in the playoffs. He's got 12 field goals himself. So he alone is on pace to get more than 3.5 field goals. Mr. Matt Gay made 32 of 34 kicks for the Rams in the regular season. He's really good. And I think the Bengals are going to settle for field goals. That's been their problem in the playoffs because they make a lot of progress and then their defense gives up a sack, or their offensive line rather. And, Aaron Donald's going to be getting a lot of sacks. That great Rams defensive line will be getting a lot of sacks. So I look for the Bengals to settle for a lot of field goals. So give me the over 3.5 on field goals. And then I've got the Bengals plus 4.5. I'm picking the Rams to win outright, as I said. So my bonus pick would be for you to bet Rams money line and Bengals plus 4.5. Maybe you win both outcomes. That would be best case. But worst case, you only lose very little. Bengals have been amazing as the underdog this season. They've won outright as the underdog in the last 2 playoff games. 5 of 6 playoff games decided by 3 points or less in the last 6 games. Bengals should cover 4.5 points here. Quite frankly, every divisional round and conference championship game has gone down to 3 points or less, minus the 6-point win for the Chiefs in overtime, of course. So the Bengals have won by 3 the last 2 rounds. It's going to be really close. I like the Rams to win outright, but Bengals should cover 4.5, no problem. All right.
Love it. Trivia,
sports trivia before we do our statements and we get out of here so Drew can get some dinner and go to bed. It's getting close to his bedtime here. Let's see. We've got a great trivia question here. This is one that, like I said before the show, you guys should know, but might not know. So here's the trivia question. Who has the most combined yards in a Super Bowl game, counting rushing, receiving yards, interception return yards, punt return, kickoff return, and fumble return? So it's all-purpose yards in the game. Who has the most and how many roughly? Pretty close. You don't have to get an exact amount, but who has the most all-purpose yards in a single Super Bowl game? This guy is not a star. I think he has one Pro Bowl in his career. So he picked the best time to have the game of his career.
Okay, well, there goes Marshall Faulk, because that was going to be my first guess.
I mean, the first thing that pops into my mind is Devin Hester, but it's not.
It's not Hester. You're kind of warm with this. This is a guy who the one Pro Bowl he made was as a kick returner.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to go kick return route or like, not a Charles Woodson, but.
Is it like Eric Mitchell or Eric Metcalf? Is he the one?
Nope. I thought, Tom, you were going to guess Sterling Sharp is what I was going to say, and it's not him.
No, he'd be further down.
Let me think here.
Not a star.
Yeah, so, we're going for like, just a utility guy, in my opinion.
It's a Super Bowl that we've watched. I'll give you, well, no, I don't want to give you that clue.
Wait.
So this may give it away if I give you the
maybe
no clue.
Ricky Prohl for the Rams. Greatest
I love Ricky Prohl though.
No,
no, that we watched. I would say, wasn't there like a big return in the 49ers Ravens game?
Ooh, somebody's getting warm.
Oh, so that's Jacoby Jones, right?
There you go.
Jacoby Jones.
Nicely done. Teamwork on that one.
Teamwork.
I wasn't going to come up with the name, but.
Yeah, 108 kickoff return yard touchdown against the 49ers for the Ravens. I mean, how did he not win MVP? The fact that Joe Flacco won MVP that season is one of the craziest things. Not only did he have a 108-yard kickoff return touchdown, he also had a 56-yard touchdown catch on top of it. You add up all the return yards, which he had a bunch of other punt and kickoff return yards, 290 all-purpose yards in 2013, a game the Ravens won 34-31, 2 touchdowns for him. Jacoby Jones not winning Super Bowl MVP is highway robbery.
It's funny. So I was thinking about that game, but I wasn't thinking of a player on the Ravens. I was thinking that the 49ers had a big return early in that game, but I can't remember, obviously.
Yeah, there might have been
I thought that was pretty good that that
was a good pull.
That game. Yeah.
It was teamwork. You guys did it.
Absolutely.
Good job.
Yes.
Absolutely. And wasn't there one year where I think it was like maybe James White or somebody on the Patriots scored 3 touchdowns, but Tom Brady won the MVP for throwing those touchdowns?
Wasn't that the 28-3?
I think so.
It might have been. And James White, by the way, was another one that I was thinking about a trivia question. Most catches in a Super Bowl. I believe he had 14 catches. I'm talking off the top of my head because I didn't choose this, but I think James White had the record for most catches in a Super Bowl with 14 in that Super Bowl comeback. And that's what it was. It was the Falcons dropping deep. We're not going to let you beat us with a deep ball. We're up 3-4 scores, whatever. And it was Tom Brady dinking and dunking to James White. And James White got the game-winning touchdown on top of it in overtime. And I remember that year there was a bettor that placed like, I can't remember the exact amount, so don't quote me, but it was something in the ballpark of $1 million on the Falcons money line, which they were a pretty big underdog, like probably paid off to what, like 3-4 million. I can't remember the exact numbers, but that man was not happy with the outcome of that game. That is for sure.
Yeah, no, I don't have any trivia. I thought I had one on like this being the first Super Bowl with no number 1 seeds, but I don't think that's right.
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Salute statements?
Yeah. What do you guys got? Don't tell me you have nothing, Drew.
I mean, my first thought is, looking forward to the Super Bowl. And of course, they start pregame at like noon Eastern or something. And of course, some of you will be watching the Puppy Bowl, I'm sure. But no, you got to love Super Bowl Sunday. You have the the party with the food and drinks, and you watch a great game, and usually it feels like it's going to go on for 7 hours, but it's usually 3.5, 4 hours, the standard football game, NFL game, because they go so quickly these days. We'll give it 4 hours, but
Long
just
halftime show.
Yeah, longer halftime, sure, but no, just looking forward to the environment, and hopefully a really good game. I think. Again, the Super Bowl, it's like I never have a lean on who's going to win. I think we all pick the Rams, but, not going to shock me if the Bengals go out there and win. So,
Sure.
got to love the NFL parity. And sure enough, we don't have a number 1 seed. So, really looking forward to a great Super Bowl.
Now, don't even have a number 2 seed either.
Mhm.
There you go.
Both
I think
fours.
it's 2 4s, right, Tom?
Correct.
2 4s. Real quickly before I get into mine, and I'll let Tom go first if he has one, but do you guys have any fun Super Bowl Sunday plans? If you don't mind sharing.
Just staying at home, which is actually how I prefer watching the game. I've done like a couple of party, Super Bowl party type things, but quite frankly, I just like watching the game and I don't like having the distractions. There was one year where there was a Super Bowl party with a bunch of my roommates in college. I was the only one who was really, really into football. There were a couple other guys that were kind of, casually into watching the game. But a game of Bananagrams actually broke out on the coffee table in front of the television as the game is going on.
Tom was annoyed.
I was annoyed, indeed.
Hold on.
Yes.
Bananagram. I don't know
what that is either.
I
Well,
knew
listen,
Tom did, but I wasn't sure.
Okay, so Bananagrams is basically a game similar-ish to Scrabble. So it's a word game where you have a bunch of tiles, and it's basically free form where you make words, and once you've assembled all your tiles into words, you say peel, and then you grab more tiles from the middle. And once all the tiles are out the middle, the first person to complete, to put words, all their tiles together to form a bunch of words, says Bananagram, and that's how you win the game.
Sounds like a fun game, but not one to do during the Super Bowl. I agree.
I mean, it is if you don't care about the Super Bowl. It's like, what honestly are we doing here? If this is the case, it was an excuse to get together. Everybody was drinking beers and eating junk food, and I was pretty much just wanting to watch the game. So before we get into like the actual salutes and statements, that's like my half statement is like that's the best way to watch a football game is to just enjoy it, or if you're going to be with people, be of like-minded company that are more about the game and less about
I actually agree,
on the
Tom.
side.
I'm actually going to see how it goes because I'm planning on going to my girlfriend's. She's going to make the Super Bowl food, but I think it might be just me and her, possibly her mom and her brother. Not 100% sure, but I'm definitely going to be really the only true football fan there. But I do think that my girlfriend does a really good job of watching sports and commenting and actually kind of getting into the game because I think she enjoys watching it with me and with other companies. So I think it's going to be a pretty good game. I definitely like watching it with a smaller group of people because, me as a sports fan, I love hearing the commentary that the announcers are making. So I'm not one to go to a bar, then I can't hear what they're saying. Also, we have commercials and a halftime show. I'd like to see what's going on with both of those. So I prefer being in a smaller environment also. I want to have a few people, but like-minded people. And then there's going to be Drew over there who's going to be part of some massive party or something. Who knows?
Well, no, the Super Bowl, anytime you're at a Super Bowl party, sure, you'll have an area where folks are not really watching the game and talking. But of course, you're going to have the TV with the sound on. I mean, that is required at a Super Bowl party. Any Super Bowl party I've been to has done that. But I must say, in college, we would go get a Little Caesars pizza and eat it during the Super Bowl by ourselves. So not going to do that. But wish I could still. But
that sounds good. But Drew's too skinny these days.
I could not eat an entire Little Caesars pizza in one sitting nowadays.
Wait, everybody got their own individual Little Caesars?
Okay. Yes.
You better believe it.
Absolutely.
Drew, do you remember the time that I came to your place and I think we both had our individual Little Caesars pizzas and we played video games and I got your controllers all greasy?
I don't remember that,
dude,
but I'm
massive
sure that
party
happened.
foul.
I'm
I
sure
know.
that happened. Just
That's a
Well, and
massive
you know what?
foul.
It was called
he probably
revenge for
spilled beer
Drew
and
playing
pizza. Who
with the
knows?
91 Lakers, and he had Byron Scott, and Byron Scott could not miss a three-pointer. It was unbelievable. Drew was like, 3-ball, Byron Scott, three ball all day. Relentless.
Yeah, I guess you did
Smoked
come
me.
over for a Super Bowl once.
Yeah, that wasn't during the Super Bowl, but I did come to
Oh.
your house for, I think it was the
Not
Packers
the
and
Niners.
Steelers.
Yeah, it was Packers Steelers because
Packers
okay.
Steelers when the
Okay.
Packers got that win, and that was like they won as a 6th seed. I do remember being at your place for that Super Bowl. Yeah. So,
Interesting, but yeah, I don't remember that. I kind of remember that. I don't know. Anyway, go
didn't
ahead.
JC come by too? I think JC came by also.
That's a stretch. I don't know.
I want to say he
I'm
did.
not sure. Too long
And it was
ago.
like his first Super Bowl party because he was Malaysian and he never watched the Super Bowl. That was one of my college roommates. I want to say that JC and I came over, and that would have been sophomore year, I think. Because freshman year, I remember freshman
Well, what
year,
year
I think,
was the Super Bowl? There's an easy fact check here.
yeah, Packers and Steelers. Look up what year that was. Because I'm pretty sure that my freshman year, Tom, I was at one of those parties that you don't like. It was a bunch of people in
Like 11 or
college,
12.
and they weren't really watching the game. That was the Manning and Breeze, where it was Manning threw that pick late, and I was upset. And you were still a senior in high school. You were 1 year behind us.
February 6, 2011.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
That is the right one.
it was our sophomore year?
sophomore year, because 09-10 season, Super Bowl would have been 2010. So that would have
Yeah.
been our freshman year.
Yeah.
And 2011, sophomore year.
Oh,
I
okay.
remember going to that Super Bowl at your house. And JC would have come for sure because he was my roommate at the time.
I'm sure it happened. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So much for
That's
your
a
memory.
deep pull. Yeah, that's a deep pull.
I remember that. That was fun.
Oh,
Tom,
good. Glad it was great.
You probably, I don't know if you know this or not, but Drew had 2 roommates in college, and one of them mostly liked me. The other one definitely did not mostly enjoy my company. So that was interesting. Have you ever met Joe, one of Drew's roommates?
Joe Pecoraro?
No, that's a
No,
different
different
Joe.
Joe.
Joe's a good guy. He was
Okay.
the guy who was one of my next door neighbors freshman year in college.
Okay, I
I
might
don't know
not
if
know
you ever
the
met
Joe.
Joe.
Yeah, I might not know that Joe.
Big
I don't
bearded
know.
guy.
I don't know
No.
if Castleman. I don't know.
That
It's
doesn't
been
sound. Yeah, I
Needless
don't
to
think so.
say,
at
he
least.
was not my number one fan, and I was not his number one fan either. Probably why Drew and I never lived together during college, because Drew lived with his freshman year bunkmates, and I'm pretty sure that Joe would have vetoed me living with them.
Oh, we also lived in a 3-person the whole
Yeah,
time.
so you guys had your
Mhm.
little go-to. I remember I almost lived with you, Drew, because that one year one of them was going to leave, but they never did, and you guys kept your same tradition of living together. So,
Yep.
Anywho, salute statements, anything
Go
that I
ahead.
mean, Drew kind of already had his. Tom, anything from you?
Yeah, so a couple of salutes before I get to the statement. First off, football related, not necessarily Super Bowl. A salute to Lovie Smith getting hired to coach the Houston Texans.
Yes, sir.
Touching very lightly on the Brian Flores lawsuit against the NFL for some racial hiring practices. Lovie Smith becomes the first black head coach to have 3 gigs as the full-time guy. Romeo Crennel was an interim coach for Houston when they fired Bill O'Brien, but Lovie Smith is the first black coach to have that head position 3 separate times: Bears, Buccaneers, and now, of course, the Texans. So a salute to him. Also, a salute to Eric Weddle, who, if you look at his Pro Football Reference page, has no regular season statistics beyond 2018, and yet here he is in the Super Bowl. The Rams signed him right before their postseason run. He's played in all of 3 games this year, all in the postseason. Raheem Morris called him up and said, hey, we need some insurance at safety, and here he is actually getting on the field. He said that a full-time return to football is not in his future. He's going to go back to being a regular guy, but what a story to be able to just kind of come almost literally off the couch and be able to play at that level and potentially, make a significant difference in this game. So a salute to Eric Weddle. As far as statement goes, I know that this is Super Bowl time. The primary food that people are going with are, of course, buffalo wings. I think, though, everyone should be thinking and dreaming a little bit bigger. Fried chicken, you get so much more bang for the buck when it comes to a Super Bowl food. Go for a whole bird, go for a bucket of cluck, as my dad likes to say. You get the variety of the breast, the thigh, the leg, and yes, you get the wings. I understand wings are a very popular dish, especially this time of year, because they're small. More people can have them. You have a lot of them. Much better bang for the buck, and I think, much better overall flavor for just some good old fried chicken. It's good hot, and it is good cold as well, so you have a lot of diversity. Don't have to worry about people liking certain sauces a different way. Oh, this is too hot, this isn't hot enough. Fried chicken, you can go a lot of different ways, or rather just like one or two ways with that, where you got mild, you got spicy. You can fit everybody under those two umbrellas. You don't have all the different sauces of teriyaki, lemon pepper, garlic, parmesan. Fried chicken is a very underrated Super Bowl food. I'm pretty sure I'll probably go out and get some myself. Much better than, I think, the overrated just chicken wing.
So
wait, Monday morning, if you have leftovers, are you having fried chicken for breakfast?
I'll have fried chicken just about any time. Cold too. I won't reheat it. Like, it's good hot when you get it from the restaurant, and then you can go to that puppy anytime cold.
So you're really good with eating just about anything for breakfast then?
No, I don't think so. Tom's particular. I think he's just a
I know he is.
fan.
That's why I'm investigating here.
Yeah.
I'm particular about what foods I eat. I'm not super particular about when I eat them necessarily. Every now and again I'll go for dinner, but typically breakfast food stays with breakfast. But I am not at all opposed to the breakfast cold pizza or cold fried chicken. Should you have some handy.
Warm.
Yeah, I can't do that. Not anymore.
So, Tom,
even if it's warm, I can't do that in the morning.
Particular fried chicken place that's your favorite? I mean, where are you going to go?
I think the best fast food fried chicken is Popeyes. For my money, that's where I'm probably going to go. But I have, there are some more artisanal places. I think it's like Joe's Crab Shack or something like that. I've heard they have really, really good fried chicken, albeit very expensive. Mm-hmm. But I'll probably be going with Popeyes if we're talking just fast food chain fried chicken.
Nice. Drew, what's your favorite Super Bowl snack? I'm already guessing. I know Tom's favorite because he just went ad nauseum about his good old fried chicken.
Well, that's my favorite main. If we're talking sides, I think I just go straight up Doritos as my favorite side chip with that.
I like Doritos. I'd like Tostitos with salsa. It's probably my favorite. Doritos might be my number one chip if I'm not adding anything to it. I'll say this. I love pigs in a blanket. The mini hot dogs.
Oh yeah.
I went to a lot of Super Bowl parties growing up. At my best friend Sam's house in high school, and then later as adults also. And his sister made pigs in a blanket, and they're incredibly good the way she made them, at least, for sure.
Drew, what's on your Super Bowl plate?
I mean, normally in the last few years, I made meatballs.
Ooh, you made them?
Yeah, those are good.
Why do you sound so surprised?
Those are
I
house
didn't know
favorite.
Drew cooked. I've gotten into cooking bacon lately, by the way. But Drew, I want to try your meatballs.
Yes. Yeah, I'm good with anything that's unhealthy. Pizza, chicken, fried chicken wings, whatever. Yeah, serve it up. Mozzarella sticks.
Ooh,
sure,
that's good. Anything unhealthy just on Super Bowl Sunday, though, right, Drew? Other days of the year, you're eating healthy.
Correct. That's my one day to really, really just eat whatever I want.
Well, don't forget Valentine's Day. My girlfriend and I are going to a fancy restaurant day. We're celebrating the day before Super Bowl Sunday. So we definitely have a 2-day in a row treat yourself day, as they say in Parks and Rec. So that'll be fun. It's actually kind of a big week for a lot of people. We got the football, and then we have the Valentine's Day, back-to-back days. Hopefully you guys are ready for both.
Sure.
I need to go to the grocery store for Valentine's, but yeah, I'll
For
be good.
Valentine's Day, not for the food. Yeah, gotta go. I have work to
The
do on both
Castleman's going to
fronts.
Popeyes for both.
Let's go. Let's go, baby.
No. Super Bowl is the trashy Popeyes. Valentine's is going to be, the homemade filet mignon, lobster tail broiled in the oven.
Oh, filet mignon is overrated, by the way.
Well, that's not
Give
a
me a New
statement
York
that can be
strip
said.
steak or a ribeye or something.
No,
It's all about preference. Like I used to be a ribeye guy, but it's just I can't handle the fat marbling.
Gotta love a good
content
ribeye.
anymore. I got to go a little more lean on my steaks, just from a personal perspective. I do like a good ribeye, though.
All right. Well, hey, I'm looking forward to hearing how all that goes. A really, really big weekend ahead for sure.
Mhm.
I'll circle back to football before we head out of here. I do have a statement that is football related. It's a two-parter. So first off, this is more of the salute. Salute to the Rams for doing everything they can to win now. We get so obsessed with prospects and the future of your team. Well, the Rams gave up all their draft picks, and what they've done worked. Matthew Stafford, career season, top 5 player in the league. Getting him was huge for the Rams. Von Miller, counting the playoffs, he's played 11 games, and I believe he has 7 sacks for the Rams. He's been incredible for the Rams. Kind of had a little bit of a rebirth. He was actually doing a little bit worse in Denver compared to his best Pro Bowl type seasons. Von Miller's been big. Odell Beckham Jr., over 100 receiving yards in the NFC Championship game. Not too sure they win that game without him. So those 3 additions have been huge for the Rams. Just like the Bucs last offseason added Brady, but let's not forget they added Gronk and Antonio Brown. Well, this season, the Rams went out and added Stafford, OBJ, and Von Miller mid-season. You thought they were going in with Stafford? Well, they were going all in with the Von Miller and OBJ stuff. So you guys know I hate tanking. I want to win now. So hats off to the Rams for going for it. And really, even if they lose the Super Bowl, I'd say it worked pretty good. If they win, definitely a massive success. Then my second statement is, and I don't know that this is bold because I feel like a lot of people maybe are sleeping on him, but if Matthew Stafford wins the Super Bowl, he is assuring himself of a Hall of Fame career. He's 12th all-time in career passing yards. He plays another 4 or 5 seasons, which he will. He will, without question, retire top 5 in the league in pass yards. He's 4th all-time in career passing yards per game. Yes, that's helped out a little bit by playing on the Lions and throwing up some yards when you're down in games. But when you're 4th all-time in a statistic like that, and you're going to retire top 5 in pass yards, you're pretty good. The one knock on him is he hadn't won a playoff game prior to this year. He wins the Super Bowl this season. Even if he retires tomorrow, I put him in the Hall of Fame, and I know he's not going to retire tomorrow. So Matthew Stafford shores up a Hall of Fame career by winning the Super Bowl this Sunday. You guys agree?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL isn't quite as stringent, but yeah.
Is the MLB, no.
Yeah.
But even in the MLB, I'd probably put him in. I mean, he is going to be top 10 all time in most statistics, and he's going to have that ring. The more interesting story is if he doesn't win a ring, is he a Hall of Famer? But this is what puts him over the top. I mean, he actually, Tom, is a slightly better version of Eli. And Eli has the 2 rings, which is why he's guaranteed in the Hall. But, I mean, Stafford has better regular season numbers than Eli Manning for sure.
Yeah, I'd say I'd say he's not even slightly better than Eli. I think he's definitely a better quarterback.
Well, then Eli's going to be in the Hall.
So,
let's put Stafford in.
Well, that's the thing. I don't necessarily think Eli should be in the Hall, but such is the way of things.
You got to get some points for longevity, though. Eli is top 10 in yards. Again, I think Eli is one of the lesser Hall of Famers, and I think Stafford might be one of the lesser Hall of Famers too, but I think that he definitely belongs, and that Super Bowl ring is just about going to clinch it for him on this Sunday.
I think if his last name weren't Manning, we'd be thinking about him differently, but yeah, I think Eli's going to end up in there.
2 Super Bowl championships. That's And Eli was great in those postseason runs. There's a lot to be said about being good in the big stage. I mean, he had some incredible numbers. It wasn't like Tom Brady Super Bowls where Brady was managing the games. Eli put up some big numbers in those postseason runs. So
I guess so.
All right. Well, hey, guys, we'll recap it all next week. Looking forward to a fun Super Bowl. Fill out your prop sheets. Send them over in the group chat. Looking forward to seeing who wins that battle. Have a good one. All right. See ya. Thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll be back next week.